I'm Charles Cummings, editor of American Civil War Today. Today's podcast is on a person's first American Civil War reenactment. I have Newman Lanier with me. Newman is a web consultant and is actually the web producer for this podcast's website, AmericanCivilWarToday.com. Welcome to the show, Newman.
Thanks. Very glad to be here.
Now, Newman, I understand that you recently had your first American Civil War reenactment experience. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Charles, you were there with me.
I was indeed.
That was it was the first time I'd ever been to anything like that. But when I think about it, it's really not. It really wasn't my first one. That I went to Georgia Military College, and they had like small reenactments, like a guy with a camp, like not a major battle. And then when I think about it, I may have been given one as an assignment, but I have no recollection of it, like going to.
Wait, so when you say assignment, you mean you had to go to reenactment when you were in university?
Yeah. College class, and they're like, okay, go out to the reenactment. And I feel like maybe I did, maybe I lied about it. I don't know, but it did not make a big impression on me.
Okay, but you went to military school, and in fact, you actually were on the cannon team. Is that what they call it?
That's right.
The cannon team?
The cannon crew.
The cannon crew, okay.
Yeah, my military school was Georgia Military College in Milledgeville, Georgia. That's the old capital of Georgia, and very cool old building. And, the military school has been there for a long, long time. It's bad. I can't remember exactly. I think I'm the 113th Corps of Cadets, but it seems like the school was made in the 1880s. I want to say. However, but the Civil War was a prevalent thing. Just growing up in the South, like reading Gone with the Wind.
Right.
I can remember doing a report on blockade runners. I grew up in Atlanta, all those battlefields.
And Sherman and Johnson's campaigns in Georgia. I mean, those are famous, historical, everything like that.
Yeah, it's lore down there.
Right.
But I never really engaged with it.
Okay. Okay, so that was basically your experience with the American Civil War. Okay, why did you want to go to reenactment?
Well, when you invited me along.
Okay, is that a good enough reason?
No, it's not a good enough reason. So growing up with it all around in the South, and I guess I would never really read, and my dad's way into it. And you basically, the reason why I wanted to go is because you got me involved with the ACW game.
Okay, so maybe our viewers don't know about the game. Can you just give them like a 1 minute?
Sure.
What is the game about? And
so it's a war simulation game based in the American Civil War. It's turn based, so it's not like a shoot 'em up game. It's like a strategy game. It's kind of like a board game, like the Risk board game, like on super duper steroids. Like Risk would be like for kindergartners, and AGOD would be for postdoc, students. Like it's an incredibly diverse and complex, and it spans the whole width and breadth of the whole Civil War. So you learn the generals and the maps, and it's all pretty much historically accurate. There's all the types of strategy. There's Navy and all that whatnot. So
okay. So I mean, sort of a computer game is what made you really push you over the edge. So let's go to reenactment and see what it's like there.
What it really did was personalized the generals, so that I'm like, oh, I know who Johnston was. Oh, I know who Longstreet was.
Right,
I know who Pope, the people that were involved there. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I know that guy's a good general. I know that guy's a bad general. As far as their numbers in the game. And I'm not that far along, because the game doesn't follow a historic path.
You can make your own history in the game.
Right. But so I don't know. I mean, other than knowing the names, I know that. Second Manassas, and I know that it's also called Bull Run. It's like you kind of know these things, but I didn't know like the railroad cut or Tom Jackson, surprising, and Longstreet's ride in, like all these different stories. So I didn't really know any of that.
Okay, so what did you expect? Like, before going, what were some of your expectations? What did you think you would experience there?
Right. So Mostly, I was just curious.
Okay.
Mostly I expected to go and I don't know. Yeah, just sort of see all of the, see the folks. I did know that there would be a camp there because that's for that original experience at military school. So I knew that there would be people camped out there all weekend, and they would have like fires and then you could go up and talk to them. I knew that the uniforms would be really cool because they would be in period clothing. I did not. So the things that I didn't expect were like all of the community involved with it, like the settlers and the people in the spectators in period dress, how beautiful the ladies were in those hoop dresses and those corsets and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, I did not expect that.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit more about that. So, I mean, you were there for was Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
right?
Like a 2.5 day event. What are some of the events that you went to and saw?
So, well, of course, there were 3 days, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday of reenactment, like people out on the battlefield. But then there was sort of the sutlers' tents. Sutler is a word that I just learned. So there are people selling books and wares and stuff.
Well, what is a sutler?
A sutler and I guess I don't think it was just in the Civil War, but any merchant that follows an army to sell them stuff.
Okay.
And I know that happened a lot in all armies in the past. And I imagine it happens in modern armies.
Yeah, I just read about this on the article on the reenactment, and it's where a civilian merchant sells to soldiers in the army.
Right.
So it's an interesting distinction. So it's actually civilian selling, as opposed to today. And it's pretty much faded away now because today, you used to be in the
military.
Today in the U.S. military, that system is owned by. It's part of the government system, isn't it?
No, well, I mean, there's like on post, there's McDonald's and Burger King for sure. I don't know if there's McDonald's on there, but you know what I mean. So like, but do they follow soldiers on campaign? Since I've never been down range. So anyway, but the other things that I saw, so settlers' tents, the soldiers' camps. It was kind of cool. We rode our bikes around and saw the Union camp, right? So it's like the main viewing area was next to the CSA tent campsite, and then around on the backside was the Union.
So they had them separated.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I really saw, the things that I really liked were the living history and the stuff that happened in the symposium tent. I guess there was a Tom Jackson, and there was a Longstreet. And
what is living history? Because I think some people might not always be familiar with.
Sure. So this was a guy that was in uniform. He actually wasn't a reenactor. So there was a different Tom Jackson that was a reenactor, but he's in uniform and he stays in character and discusses stories about his life, the character's life.
Right.
And he interacts he was interacting as Tom Jackson, and he had some of his staff, people that were playing roles of his staff. And he would just answer questions and tell stories. And it was just a great way for me to kind of once again more fully identifying with the place and with the characters. Other things that I saw, the officers' reception was really cool. And then some of the surrounding things like the Bella Grove mansion. Okay,
so other historical
around that area. Well, that was the other thing that I didn't even expect to go, because this was in Manassas, but they had actually shifted it up into the Shenandoah Valley near Middletown.
Right, because of the National Park Service laws, and I wrote about that a little bit in the article on this reenactment. Yeah.
One of the things that I really that I saw that sort of made me think about was that the 3 divisions of force there. There was, infantry, cavalry, and artillery.
Right.
So it's just like in each how they positioned themselves and how they moved around. There was a couple really, really cool cavalry charges. Right. So the cavalry would come out and they would do demonstrations, and I just thought that was fantastic. The thing, you maybe you didn't ask about this, but But the thing that kind of left me not was sort of like, well, the scale of the battle, to like squeeze it all in so that people could see it, was sort of that sort of kind of threw me off. And I was just like, well, okay, that's kind of cool, but it didn't. So
when you say scale, you expected more reenactors to be there, or?
No. I mean, like the battlefield itself, like they tried to they took it from, so it's hard to sort of reenact it in the same space. They just had to, so instead of them being, the number of soldiers, but then also like how far these things took, when Longstreet came in, like how far did he push on the flank to, where the Zouave's vortex of hell was.
Exactly.
Like was that, because for us in the reenactment, it was, I don't know,
50 yards maybe.
No. It was more than 50 yards. It was probably, like 500 paces, about 500 yards.
Oh, you mean the whole Longstreet?
Yeah, whole Longstreet flank like that.
Right.
The whole battlefield was maybe 1,000 yards.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is something that happens a lot in American Civil War, battlefields really, not just the reenactments, and that is the original battlefield may have occurred over 8 or 9 miles, but it's unusual that much of the battlefield is owned by the National Park Service or by Foundation, and they only own a part of that, maybe 10%. I mean, maybe less, maybe a little more, but yeah, I think it just kind of goes down to the practical situation, and it is, you have maybe 4,000 reenactors there, when in fact there were 100,000 people, 100,000 soldiers that fought at Second Battle of Manassas. You're right. The scale is very different. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got to. I guess it just kind of threw me off because I wasn't like it wasn't talked about or wasn't sort of like reiterated like this is in a smaller scale or that it kind of you could, because when you're simulating something you don't. Obviously, it's a simulation. Obviously, it's not real. So the things are going to change. I just wish that the scale was more.
That kind of brings us into the next question. I mean, you are a web producer or consultant, and really, what your expertise is in user experiences. And so, can you comment? First of all, just tell us what a user experience is, because it's sort of a new idea. And tell us what are your opinions on the user experience as a spectator going to one of these events?
Right. User experience design it's actually a traditional sort of design methodology, but it's getting a lot of attention these days because of it's been necessary. So basically, what it is it's seeing an experience or seeing an event from the user's perspective. So I try to look, my expertise is in web design. So I look at an education. Well, if you think about this reenactment as an educational event, then, there's a ton of perspectives that user-centered design can give. But it's just seeing stuff from the user's perspective and then trying to get feedback in order to optimize it for an improved, see it from the user's perspective to see if you met your mark with whatever you were designing. So, and I don't, since I'm not really involved with the reenactment, I can't really say what they did or how they did it, but I can get some feedback on how I experienced the event and what expectations were not met. And I guess that's sort of maybe what you were asking about as far as expectations. So I said that I was curious about the culture, and I certainly got to engage in the culture. So that was a huge plus. The living history tent, that was fantastic. They made it, because it was sunny, so they had it under a tent. It was in a nice breezy spot. Like they had chairs for us. It was pretty comfortable, pretty relaxed and laid back. So you could interact with them in a good way. You could interact with everybody in a good way. So my expectation of getting mixed in with all that culture was really good. The second thing, as far as like to be educated on the event itself, they did have a narration, but the narration was kind of soft. Here's a good story. So the narration was kind of soft on the first night and first day under the tent. And on the third day, they actually moved the speaker, because they had speakers out along what they called the spectating line. So, so they had these speakers, but I didn't want to sit out there in the sun. I was just like, well, all right. But they moved the speaker inside the tent so you could kind of hear.
Oh, so the speakers are in both places, on the line, like the firing line, and then also in the tents area. Okay, cool.
But it was interesting. A lot of people weren't really respectful of the narrator and were just sort of talking. So there's a bunch of kids like running around and sort of stuff. So that was sort of like, well, and you don't want to tell a kid not to have fun and be quiet while I'm trying to listen. But as far as like the education part of it, like I really expected to see it would have been great if they had a living, or not a living, but just a board with all the troop positions. Because you're looking out over the field and you don't know like who's who or what's what, Like it would have been cool to have a board that somebody was moving around while they see it over there. And the narrator's doing that, but it would have been cool to have another visual piece. And that would help set the scale correctly.
Right.
So you could have it actually on the map and say, this is what happened at this time, and that's what they're simulating. And that way you could sort of reconcile the simulation with the actual events. You can say, okay, that guy is so-and-so. And you could do it with, so they had their banners and guidons, their unit colors. And that's great for people who can look across and see that, but we don't know that stuff. It would have been cool if they had like big neon signs that said, this is this unit,
on the battlefield. But then that kind of looks unrealistic.
Well, it's not realistic. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe some way to like help us to interface with the history and the simulation. So it's like a very clear cut, like this is simulated. I think that map, that's a good, I just thought of that, when you asked me, and I think that might be a really good way to sort of like help people engage with it, sort of fix that problem of scale. So those are just some of the things that you would do.
So I think I get your idea. Your idea is to have like, sort of like a military map where you can move units around on the map. So it's not a static picture. You can actually move. Someone's job is to move that around as it's happening while the narrator is narrating the events.
Right.
That would be cool.
Basically a sand table. The military uses a sand table.
I've seen that in the movies.
Yeah, where they're like, okay, now this is what's going on.
Exactly.
And then that way people could kind of gather around the sand table and you can sort of see and then look out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, last question is, do you think you'll go to another reenactment? You've experienced one. It sounds pretty positive to me.
Yeah, I definitely will. The actual reenactment isn't all that sort of engaging as far as, just like seeing the soldiers out. Like I do think that part is now like no longer a draw. Mm-hmm. Like just seeing the soldiers go out and
fire
clash and just bang, 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 bang. And you're like, okay. But to go and get into the culture and to see, and now to kind of see like how others do it, like how do the other reenactments, how do they do it? And then I can sort of judge and say, all right, and maybe this is one of those, I do think that I think it's an incredible educational environment.
And we're in this 150 year anniversary of the American Civil War. And of course they do reenactments every year, but I sort of get the feeling that they're a bit bigger, a bit more events. With Antietam coming up soon. Yeah. Fredericksburg, somewhere I assume will happen in December, and of course Gettysburg next year.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be some big stuff. So I think there's going to be lots of opportunities out there for people that to go visit the reenactment. And I think that's one thing I read in the article is basically, even if you're not super buff in the American Civil War, I think we met someone there and like they were, from South Korea, and the kids absolutely loved the experience. Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to be an American Civil War historian to enjoy the experience. And we met those English people at the pub in Winchester. Same thing there. They were like, this was, they had such a great day.
Right. And these guys had just come and they were just touring.
They just randomly stopped in.
They just would drive by and like, what's that? And then, yeah, that's cool.
Newman, thanks for coming on the show. Anything else you want to add?
No, but I am. I'm looking forward to going again. Now that going back over it, it's been I don't know how long it's been. Maybe
about a month.
A month. Yeah. I'm thinking back on it, man. It really was a good time. So let's go and do it again.
All right. Well, this has been another edition of American Civil War Today.